Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have some important news out of the state of Ohio for the 2026 midterms, where President Donald Trump has officially endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy for Ohio governor in that race. Trump released a statement going over what he said and such about Vivek Ramaswamy and giving him his support. So it goes like this. Vivek Ramaswamy is, quote, something special according to U.S. President Donald Trump, calling Ohio a great state, and he would be a great governor, Ramaswamy, if he is elected. Trump saying, Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of the great state of Ohio, a place I love, and won big 3 times in 2016, 2020, and 2024, Trump wrote on Truth Social, offering his complete and total endorsement for Vivek Ramaswamy. He described the 38-year-old as a young, strong, and smart patriot. He said, I know Vivek well, competed against him, and he is something special. He is young, strong, and smart. Vivek is also a very good person who truly loves our country, Trump said. As your next governor, Vivek will fight tirelessly to grow the economy, cut taxes and regulations, promote Made in the USA, champion American energy dominance, keep our now very secure borders secure, and stop migrant crime, strengthen our military veterans, ensure law and order, advance election integrity, protect our always under siege Second Amendment, Trump said. Vivek Ramaswamy will be a great governor of Ohio and has my complete and total endorsement. He will never let you down. Trump ending the tweet with a lot of ways that he does when it comes to endorsing candidates. Now, this isn't too much of a surprise, but it's still significant as the president has made his endorsement in the race. Now, first, before we get to the polling, it's obviously important to know Vivek Ramaswamy is the only notable Republican currently running in this race. 2 other Republicans that were notable are Dave Yost and Robert Sprague, the Ohio Attorney General and State Treasurer, both of which have suspended their candidacies and are no longer running. Also, other candidates that we're considering, like Jim Tressel and Frank LaRose and Warren Davidson, all declined and are not running for this race. Also worth noting that John Husted, the U.S. Senator, obviously being U.S. Senator and running for Senate, endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy. So Ramaswamy now has gotten the endorsement of pretty much every notable Republican name out there at the federal and state level. Both the president and vice president have endorsed him. Several U.S. senators, representatives, state legislatures from Ohio, and notable national Republican figures as well. So for the Republican side of things, Vivek Ramaswamy will be the Republican candidate. Democrat, things are more interesting. Right now, the only notable Democrat in the race is Amy Acton, the former director of the Ohio Department of Health. And if the race remains the way it is right now, she's likely going to be the Democrat candidate. The one potential thing that could shake up this race is if former U.S. Representative Tim Ryan decides to make a run for governor. He has publicly expressed interest in doing so, and his decision is expected to happen late in 2025. Now, there was a possibility a few months ago that Sherrod Brown, the former U.S. Senator, could ultimately run for governor, but he has decided to run for Senate in that race. So Sherrod Brown running for Senate and potentially Amy Acton or Tim Ryan running for governor could give the Democrats possibly their best case scenario at trying to win these races in the state of Ohio, which, as President Trump said in his statement rather accurately, Ohio has become a lot more of a red state. We'll be getting to that in just one moment. But if Ryan does decide to run, the Bowling Green State University YouGov poll from the beginning to middle of October shows Acton leading 50-41. So even if Ryan decides to run, it seems Amy Acton does have a lead starting out, at least right now, in that Democratic primary. But that could be very interesting to see how that plays out. For the general election, Inside Elections and Cook Politico have it as solid. For the Republicans, Sabados Cristobal has it as likely. In the polling thus far, Vivek Ramaswamy is leading Amy Acton by 4.5%, overall a lean Republican win in the race to the White House average. Real Clear Politics has Ramaswamy up 6.5%, overall a likely Republican win. Now, this race is interesting because even though Vivek Ramaswamy is leading, and he does start out with a pretty decent floor of support, there is still roughly 7% of voters that are undecided in this race. And obviously how we saw with New Jersey and Virginia, New Jersey voted 56.5% for Mikey Sherrill, Jack Shirley 42.9%, and Virginia, Spanberger 57.2% to 42.6%. The Democrats just had a massive win on election night 2025. And Democrats are obviously going to try and parlay that into the 2026 midterms. Now, Ohio is a state where I think the Democrats certainly start out at a disadvantage, but one that potentially, if Vivek Ramaswamy ends up being off-putting throughout the campaign, the Democrats may potentially find a way to make this race a lot more competitive. I don't think the Democrats are going to win this race at the end of the day, but I think it's possible enough to sort of catch the Republicans sleeping a little bit in this race and maybe be able to make this race very competitive. Now, Ohio itself, at the presidential level, has not been all that close. In 2024, it voted for Donald Trump by 11.2% over Kamala Harris. In 2020, even with Joe Biden winning the presidential election, Donald Trump still won the state of Ohio by 8 points. And in 2016, against Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump won the state by 8 points. So Ohio has been a likely Republican state at the presidential level in 3 straight elections. Now, the governor level in 2022, it was actually a safe Republican win, where Mike DeWine won by 25 points over his Democratic opponent. Now, this is where the Democrats have a little bit of optimism and hope here. In 2018, which was the midterm election during President Trump's first term, Mike DeWine defeated the Democrat Cordray by only 3.7% of the vote. It was a very close competitive race. And given how 2025 just went in terms of how well the Democrats overperformed what the polls were suggesting that they would, and how many independent and Democratic voters turned out to vote, and Republican voters either didn't turn out to vote or even some maybe turned out and voted Democrat, the Democrats are hoping for a very strong 2026 midterm elections. And if the 2025 things that happened in the governor's races carry over to the midterms, an election that could be very close like this in Ohio may very well be possible. Now, the Senate election also is important to talk about Ohio as well. Senator and governor elections are usually very different. Historically and throughout most election cycles, you're more likely going to see a down ballot, like governor race, for instance, be one that the opposite party can win more so than a Senate election. But we just saw Bernie Moreno, the Republican, defeat Sherrod Brown by 3.6% in the Senate race in 2024. So there was a Senate race in 2024 that was under 5 points. So in terms of can Ohio actually be competitive, yes, it can. The question is going to be ultimately, will it be competitive for 2026? For Vivek Ramaswamy versus Amy Acton, I think we actually could see a pretty competitive race here. Ramaswamy starting out already in the high 40s to 50% in the Bowling Green State poll, I personally think is a good sign for Ramaswamy. Now, Acton starting out at 47% in this poll, though, however, is also a pretty good sign for Acton. So it's going to be really interesting to see ultimately how this race shakes out. We also are not accustomed to seeing close polling in Ohio. In that 2024 Senate race, the final few polls showed the averages right around a 2 to 1 point lead for Bernie Moreno, depending on the average that you're looking at. 538 only had him up 0.7. Real Clear Politics had Moreno up 1.7. 270 to win actually had Sherrod Brown up 0.3. In the Hill, DDHQ had Moreno up 2.1. So they showed very competitive close polling. And ultimately the election, as I showed you, ended up being 3.4%. So decently similar to what the final result actually was. Now for 2022, where J.D. Vance defeated Tim Ryan by around 7 points or so, we also saw pretty competitive polling, where early on for Tim Ryan versus J.D. Vance, Tim Ryan was actually leading in most of these polls. There was a lot of undecided vote. Vance was only getting in the mid to high 30s in a lot of polls, and there was a lot of undecideds. Tim Ryan was only getting around 44, 46% in a lot of these polls. But then as you got into September, past Labor Day, and the race started to pick up, then you started to see J.D. Vance narrowly pull ahead, and in the final few days really started to pull ahead into the likely Republican margin that he ultimately won by. So in terms of polling for the 2026 Ohio governor's race, right now Vivek Ramaswamy is leading by 4.5%, but the trend has been the last few election cycles. The polls remain very, very close in the race, and then in the last few days or so, that's when the polls start to break, usually in the Republicans' direction. Now for 2026, is it possible, if the election environment ends up being so great for the Democrats, that in the final few days, maybe Vivek Ramaswamy is leading, and then the polls start breaking for, say, Amy Acton or Tim Ryan, and the race ends up getting super close, and maybe the Democrats can pull off an upset? It's definitely possible. I think Republicans are still favored to win this race, but we just saw that in New Jersey and Virginia. Anything is certainly possible, especially if voters of one party are extremely motivated to get out and vote. So for 2026, how do I have the state of Ohio? Well, I consider 5 states right now on the governor's map to truly be toss-ups at this current point in time. Ohio I don't have in that rating right now. Right now I have Ohio in the likely Republican rating, which is a margin of victory in between 5 and 15%. Now, I do think it's going to be on the lower end, and I think it's possible, without Vivek Ramaswamy really having a primary challenger, that there could leave him a little bit open to a surprise for the general election if the Democrats maybe outperforming what maybe expectations may be for Ohio. But I think the Republican still wins by more than 5 points. But this is certainly a race on the governor map that I'm keeping an eye out for, because if the Democrats have another great night, like 2025 was and like 2018 was, I would not be shocked one bit to see Ohio fall under 5% margin of victory and maybe even get into potential under 1 point if everything really bottomed out for the GOP. I could certainly see Ohio getting very close. But for right now, I have it as likely for the Republicans. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Do you think Vivek Ramaswamy will win the Ohio governor's race? Or do you think Amy Acton or Tim Ryan could pull off the victory, essentially pulling off the upset in that election? Leave all your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, as I post at least one new video every single day about the most upcoming election news, political news, and the 2026 midterm elections, now that 2025 elections are officially in the books. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.